Tennessee volunteer, a duck hunter driving from Nashville into Reelfoot Lake country in the northwest corner of Tennessee will travel part of the way on the Clifton B. Cates Memorial Highway. A 21st century Tennessean will probably be oblivious to the fact that Clifton B. Cates was the recipient of some 30 military awards earned during 3 20th century wars. It was one of the few American military officers of any service to command a platoon, a company, a battalion, a regiment, and a division while under enemy fire, including being gassed with mustard gas, who served as the 19th Commandant of the Marine Corps, who directed the Marine Corps in the development of the concept of vertical envelopment through the use of helicopters, and most important, who had lettered in baseball and football for the University of Tennessee during 1912 through 1916. The University of Tennessee, Clifton Cates was described as the lightest of the guards, but the most enthusiastic and hardest fighting lineman on the squad. I've got a board over here that's hard for you to see without coming up, but there's a picture there of Clifton Cates in his football uniform that you can see after the talk. Towards the end of his career, General Cates served as Commandant of Marine Corps Schools in Quantico, Virginia, from January 1952 until his retirement from service in June of 1954. I was privileged to serve under his command while I was in basic school in Quantico, Virginia during 1953 and 1954. Can you all hear me all right in the back? All right. As Commandant of the Marine Corps from January 1948 through January of 1952, General Cates loaded and launched the 1st Provisional Marine Brigade from the West Coast bound for Korea within 3 weeks after the North Korean forces crossed the 38th parallel on June 25, 1950. Of the Marine Corps, General Cates helped plan the Incheon amphibious landing on September 15, 1950, which led to the rout of the North Korean forces. Clifton Bledsoe Cates was born at Cates Landing, Lake County, near Tiptonville, Tennessee, on August 31, 1893. He grew up hunting and fishing along the Mississippi River. He attended a local school until age 12, when he was enrolled in Branham and Hughes School for Boys near Columbia, Tennessee. From there, he went to the Missouri Military Academy in Mexico, Missouri. In 1912, Cates enrolled at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, from which he received his law degree in 1916. The United States declared war on Germany on April 6, 1917. Cates was then in Knoxville studying to take the Tennessee bar examination. In April of 1917, Brown Ayres, president of the University of Tennessee, advised Cates that he had been contacted by the Marine Corps seeking candidates to fill 8 lieutenancies in the Marine Corps Reserve. Cates submitted his application, but continued with his application to the Tennessee bar. He was actually in the middle of his bar examinations when word came that his application to the Marine Corps had been accepted. Cates left the bar examination and on June 11, 1917, began basic training at the Marine Barracks, Port Royal, South Carolina, better known as Parris Island. In 1917, Parris Island was a wilderness with a few isolated plantation homes. There were no roads, no barracks, no adequate latrines, and no fresh drinking water. Hell on earth. The recruits drilled, built barracks, drilled, dug an extensive latrine system, drilled, ate foul-smelling eggs and potatoes boiled in brackish water, and drilled. One of the recruits wrote, quote, "The first day I was in camp, I was afraid I was going to die. During my next 2 weeks, my sole fear was that I wasn't going to die." In July of 1917, the officer candidates were transferred to basic school at Quantico, Virginia, to complete a 3-month training course. While at Quantico, Cates was assigned to the 96th Company, 2nd Battalion, 6th Marine Regiment, commonly referred to as the 6th Marines. During World War II and Korea, the 1st Marine Division contained 3 infantry regiments, the 1st Marines, 5th Marines, and 7th Marines. When reference is made to the 1st, 5th, or 7th Marines, the reference is to a regiment and not to a division. As an aside, the 5th Marines and the 6th Marines fought together in France during World War I. The French government awarded each regiment the fourragère, an ornamental braided cord looped around the left shoulder. Marines who were members of the unit at the time of the award were entitled to wear the fourragère permanently. Marines who joined the unit at a later date are entitled to wear the fourragère, but only while a member of the regiment. I was a member of the 5th Marine Regiment in 1954 and 1955 and entitled to wear the fourragère at that time. Here is my fourragère. It is the only article of my uniform that still fits. Lieutenant Cates boarded the Henderson in Philadelphia and sailed to New York City, where the ship docked for a few hours. The Marine officers on board were allowed shore leave. They were to be back on board by 0800. Lieutenant Cates and others engaged in considerable carousing in New York City during their last night on shore. Lieutenant Cates left the group around 0200 and checked into the McAlpine Hotel, leaving strict instructions for a wake-up call at 0600. Of course, the desk clerk forgot, and Lieutenant Cates awoke well past 0900. He caught a taxi and headed for the docks. The Henderson had sailed without him. Lieutenant Cates had missed a troop movement and was in danger of being charged with desertion at the very outset of his military service. A British ship sailed by. Lieutenant Cates hailed the Brit, boarded her, and set out for England on his own. Meanwhile, the Henderson had stopped because of heavy fog, and the British ship came alongside. Lieutenant Cates was able to slip on board. The Henderson, with Lieutenant Cates and the 2nd Battalion, 6th Marines on board, headed for Saint-Nazaire, France. Lieutenant Cates and the 6th Marines fought in 5 campaigns in France during World War I. Lieutenant Cates won the Navy Cross, Army Distinguished Service Cross, and an oak leaf cluster in lieu of a 2nd Distinguished Service Cross for heroism in the Belleau Wood fighting, where he was both gassed and wounded. He won the Silver Star Medal at Soissons, where he was wounded a 2nd time, and an oak leaf cluster in lieu of a 2nd Silver Star Medal in the Blanc-Mont fighting. Also, he received the Purple Heart Medal with an oak leaf cluster. The French with the Legion of Honor and the Croix de Guerre with Gilt Star and 2 palms. He was entitled to wear the Fourragère awarded to the 6th Marines. At Beaurecher, Lieutenant Cates was struck in the head by a machine gun bullet which ricocheted off of his helmet. He was rendered unconscious for about 10 minutes. When he came to, he tried to put his helmet on, but it would no longer fit because of the dent made by the bullet. And there's a photograph over here of his helmet that you have to look at it pretty close, but the whole back side of it is compressed by this bullet, machine gun bullet that hit him. A salvo of shells fell around them. Cates realized that they were not ordinary shells. The gas shell had a unique whine. When they hit, there was no detonation. Cates got a whiff of gas and yelled a warning to his men. Cates reached for his gas mask, but it was missing. He remembered that he had left his gas mask in a shell hole some distance away. There was no hope of finding it in the dark. That one of his men, PFC Hall, had found a German gas mask and had taken it as a souvenir. Hall gave the German gas mask to Lieutenant Cates, who wore it for the next 5 hours. Cates, nearly suffocated, was temporarily blinded, but was alive. Lieutenant Cates fought on through the Argonne forest to the Meuse River, where he was at the time of the armistice on November the 11th, 1918. During the occupation of Germany, Lieutenant Cates and the 96th Company was stationed near Koblenz on the Rhine River. Following the Treaty of Versailles on June 23, 1919, the men of the 96th Company returned to the United States and on August the 8th, 1919, paraded with the 2nd Division in New York City. The men of the 96th Company returned to Quantico, Virginia, where they were mustered out of service. Cates had been promoted to captain, but he submitted his resignation and planned to return to Knoxville and continue his quest for a Tennessee law license. While at Quantico, he had a chance encounter with General George Barnett, who was then Commandant of the Marine Corps. General Barnett suggested that Captain Cates withdraw his letter of resignation, take 2 months' leave, and then consider staying in the Marine Corps. Captain Cates did change his mind. He stayed in the Marine Corps. He became General Barnett's aide and served as the Marine Corps liaison to President Woodrow Wilson. Captain Cates married Jane Virginia McElhenney, with whom he fathered a son and a daughter. In 1923, Captain Cates began a 2-year tour as commander of the Marine Detachment aboard the USS California. He became what is known as a seagoing Marine. That requires considerable spit and polish. Cates then had 2 tours of duty with the 4th Marine Regiment in Shanghai, China. He was a China Marine as well as a seagoing Marine. These are honored designations in the Corps. In 1941, Cates was director of the Marine Officers Basic School, which was then located in Philadelphia. The Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on December the 7th, 1941. In May of 1942, Cates held the rank of colonel and was given command of the 1st Marine Regiment. On August the 7th, 1942, the 1st Marines and the 5th Marines landed on Guadalcanal. The first night ashore for the Marines was a dangerous one, not because of a Japanese banzai attack, but rather because of trigger-happy Marines. The night reverberated with shouts of halt and rips of rifle and machine gun fire. After his late night conference with General Vandergrift, Colonel Cates tramped back to his command post, making as much noise as possible and using a flashlight to try to assure nervous Marines that he was not Japanese. Still, one Marine took a shot at the colonel. Cates recorded, quote, "Luckily, he was an artilleryman and he made a clean miss." In order to obtain information, Marines delight in relying upon rumor or scuttlebutt. In the days of sailing ships, the scuttlebutt was a cask which held the day's supply of drinking water. Men would gather around the scuttlebutt and spread the latest rumor, which was referred to as the word. More often than not, the word was inaccurate. On Guadalcanal, the word was that the Japanese could not pronounce the English letter L. As a result of this rumor, challenges and passwords included a wealth of L's like polyglot, bilious, billion, hallelujah, and Lilliputian. A few days later, after the landing, a small party of Japanese produced a good deal of indiscriminate firing near Henderson Field. It became known as Hallelujah Night because of repeated cries of the L-loaded password by Marines who thought themselves to be in danger. Battles which Colonel Cates and the 1st Marine Regiment were involved in on Guadalcanal was the Battle of the Tenarue River, or Alligator Creek, in which the 1,000-man Ichiki Battalion was annihilated. The Japanese sustained the loss of 871 dead, including their commanding officer, Colonel Kiyono Ichiki, who committed suicide following his defeat. Following Guadalcanal, Colonel Cates was ordered back to the United States, where he would become Commandant of Marine Corps Schools at Quantico, Virginia. In June of 1944, Cates was given command of the 4th Marine Division, which was then mopping up final resistance on the island of Saipan in the Marianas. Marine Division landed 3 miles away on Tinian. On the night of 24 July 1944, the Japanese counterattacked in 3 wild banzai charges. In the morning, over 1,200 Japanese dead lay in front of the Marine positions. Another 700 were wounded and were committing suicide. The island was secure within a week. After a period of recuperation on Maui, the 4th Marine Division, on February 19, 1945, under the command of General Cates, found itself off of Iwo Jima. The Japanese on Iwo Jima held out for 5 weeks of savage fighting. Almost all of the Japanese on the island died. General Cates and the 4th Division returned to Maui and prepared to retake Wake Island. The Japanese surrendered on September 2, 1945. The assault on Wake Island was canceled. General Cates and the 4th Division returned to the United States. General Cates took command of the Marine Barracks, Quantico, Virginia. General Cates won the Legion of Merit with Combat V at Guadalcanal, the Distinguished Service Medal at Tinian, and a Gold Star in lieu of a 2nd Distinguished Service Medal at Iwo Jima. He and the 4th Division also were awarded Presidential Unit citations for, for Guadalcanal, Tinian, and Iwo Jima. His Iwo Jima citation states in part, repeatedly disregarding his own personal safety, Major General Cates traversed his own front lines daily to rally his tired, depleted units, and by his undaunted valor, tenacious perseverance, and staunch leadership in the face of overwhelming odds, constantly inspired his stout-hearted Marines to heroic efforts during critical phases of the campaign. Cates met with President Harry Truman and was appointed as Commandant of the Marine Corps to follow General Alexander Vandergrift. He became Commandant on 1 January 1948. On September 25, on Sunday, June 25, 1950, North Korean forces crossed the 38th parallel and invaded South Korea. Seoul fell to the North Koreans on June 28, 1950, within 3 days. There was no Marine Corps unit of substantial size in the Far East. The Fleet Marine Force contained about 40,000 men on active duty. General Cates requested recall of the Marine Reserve of 129,000 men. Reservists flooded into Camp Pendleton and Camp Lejeune, where they were divided into 2 simple categories, combat ready or non-combat ready. It is estimated that about 50% of the organized reserve were not properly prepared for combat. About 25% had not even completed basic training. Combat readiness left much to be desired. Much of their artillery and mobile equipment was mothballed near Barstow in the California desert. On 28 June, Commandant Cates recommended to the Chief of Naval Operations and the Secretary of the Navy that the Fleet Marine Force be employed to stem the North Korean attack. On July 2, 1950, General MacArthur requested the immediate dispatch of a Marine regimental combat team with supporting air to the Far East. On July 3, 1950, General Cates attended the meeting of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, where orders were employed for the Fleet Marine Force were approved. The 5th Marine Regiment and Marine Air Group 33 were activated as the 1st Provisional Marine Brigade. The 5th Marines were under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Raymond L. Murray. Colonel Murray was the commanding officer of the basic school when I was there in 1953. And he probably is the most impressive man I've ever met. The Marine Corps was understrength by about 1/3. Fortunately, many of the officers and non-commissioned officers had World War II and amphibious landing experience. The brigade sailed from San Diego on 14 July 1950, 19 days after the North Koreans invaded South Korea. General Cates was on hand on the docks from 12 July until 14 July when the brigade sailed. And here is a picture of General Cates on the dock with some of the reservists that are going aboard ship. The brigade arrived at Pusan on 2 August 1950 and was the first American unit to get into the fight after completing the voyage from the American mainland. Although weakened by American post-war policies, the brigade was still an effective fighting force. The Marine Corps Reserve was activated by presidential proclamation on 19 July 1950. It was a generally accepted rule that a divisional scale amphibious landing would require a minimum of 60 days to plan and prepare. Planning for the Incheon landing started on 29 August 1950, only 18 days prior to the invasion date of 15 September selected by General MacArthur. It was determined that the 15 September invasion date could not be postponed. The Pusan perimeter was in serious danger of collapse. The depth of the water in the Incheon harbor was cause for anxiety because of the gradient of the seabed close to shore. An LST landing ship tank required a high tide of at least 29 feet to get in to unload. Such tides were rare and would only occur on 15 September and then again on 11 October 1950. The planners of the operation had only 18 days to prepare for a complete amphibious landing. The 5th Marines were pulled out of Pusan perimeter on the night of 6 June 1950. The 1st Marines arrived between 22 August and 6 September, and the 7th Marines arrived on 9 September. The 1st Provisional Marine Brigade then became the 1st Marine Division, which landed at Incheon on 15 September 1950. As Commandant of the Marine Corps, General Cates played an important hands-on role in the planning and support for the operation. General Cates made several trips to the Korean front before his tenure as Commandant ended in 1952. General Cates reverted to the rank of Lieutenant General following his tour of duty as Commandant, choosing to return to his post of Commandant of Marine Corps Schools. He died in Annapolis, Maryland on 4 June 1970 at the age of 76 years. He had been on active duty for 37 years. General Cates was buried at Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. Clifton Bledsoe Cate, Tennessee volunteer.